welcome to the first episode of the Baseball Odds Watch podcast, weekly edition. I can't wait to put this out for you guys. We're doing this at the perfect time. We're in the All-Star break, so there's really nothing going on for the next couple days. All-Star game just passed, and then we get into this crucial part of the season where we're headed towards August, we're headed toward the trade deadline. Everything's starting to take shape, and games get really, really important, really, really fast for a lot of teams. So before I get into the World Series odds, let's talk All-Star game. Just happened. Shout out to everybody joining on the live. It just happened, and, I'm a big fan of the MLB All-Star festivities. I'll talk more about it, my fanhood, and where I stand on the whole thing later on in the episode. But All-Star game just happened. Home Run Derby on Monday was pretty cool. The new format where everyone goes and the top four advance to a tournament style and the other guys don't was actually pretty cool. It was experimental, and I like it more than all the other formats. Definitely better than the 10-out system that they had before, but this is my favorite one. Some of the bigger power hitters didn't advance. The Gunnar Henderson and Adolis Garcia, those were my two finalists. Neither one of them advanced. Neither one of them did anything. So there was that. Ended up coming down to Bobby Witt Jr. and Teoscar Hernandez, and we know Teoscar Hernandez won by like a foot or whatever. Bobby Witt Jr. missed that last home run by it. Hit off the wall. Could have tied it, but it didn't. So Teoscar Hernandez takes home the championship. Now, that national anthem, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it was really bad. I say worse than Fergie's, but she came out saying she'd been drinking and was drunk and checking into rehab. Good for her. Bad on MLB, though, because what is the contingency plan for MLB? What is the MLB media team doing to prevent this from happening again? Because it shouldn't have happened the first time. There should have been like a handler with your celebrity singer that's watching them, making sure they're okay, making sure they're drinking water, ready to go to sing the one song that they have to sing and skedaddle. But anyway, All-Star game itself, the next day was pretty good. Paul Skeens was the big story going into it, right? Rookie pitcher. He was just pitching for LSU last year and flew through the farm system to the Pirates, and he's been dominant. Why not have him start? I think it's a huge moment, but there's two things associated with that, right? Fine, he's a rookie, but the other thing is you've got to deal with the schedules of your pitchers, right? Because if you want, let's say, Tyler Glasnow or Garrett Cole or whoever to pitch in an All-Star game on Monday, did he pitch Sunday? Did he pitch Saturday? Did he pitch Friday? Are they going to break that rest to pitch in an exhibition game? So that's the big thing for me. And then on top of it, so what if he's a rookie? He's one of the best pitchers in all of baseball and one of the most exciting stories in baseball. So let the guy pitch in the All-Star game. Let him start. It's not like it's the old days where they get 2 innings. He just got the 1 inning. He got through it. We got to see Paul Skeens versus Aaron Judge and versus Juan Soto. I mean, these are dream matchups. So let the guy pitch. Let's jump to our World Series odds. And I use FanDuel odds. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but I use the FanDuel odds. And the Dodgers are still the heavy favorites. Is there a surprise there? Some people are, because the Dodgers are hurt. But they're 3-1 favorites at plus 320, so 3 and change. So if you bet $1, you win 3. Nothing crazy there. Phillies are now the second favorites. If you watched my odds watch for the month of July, the beginning of July, the Phillies are up to second favorites at plus 420, so 4 and change to 1. The Yankees are now the third favorites. They were second favorites. They're now down to the third favorites at 5.5 to 1, plus 550. So those odds starting to change. O's and Braves have switched spots as well. The Orioles are now the fourth favorites at plus 700, so plus 7 to 1. Braves 8 to 1. They're the fifth best odds. Okay, and then From there in the top 10, you got the Guardians behind them, and then behind them is the Twins, behind them is the Mariners, then Houston, and then the Brewers, who are the best team in the Central, are the 11th favorites, which is crazy. Vegas is saying, no, the Central World Series Championship, no, not happening, right? So let's jump to the NL Central. Let's talk about the NL Central for a bit here. Let's look at the divisional odds versus the division standings. In the NL Central, look, I've said it all year. This is the wildest division in baseball. The wildest division in baseball. It's not even close. Every team in this division right now is a contender for at least a wild card spot. No other division in baseball can say that. No other division in baseball can say that. So you've got, obviously, Brewers in first. Brewers favorites to win that division. They're the highest odds or the highest favorites to win the World Series in the NL Central. Second place, you've got the Cardinals. Second favorites are the Cardinals at plus 450, so 4.5 to 1. Now, when you get to the 3 spot, right now, at this All-Star break, the Pittsburgh Pirates sit in third place. They're 6.5 back from first. In the odds, though, to win the NL Central, the Pittsburgh Pirates are plus 2,500, so 250 to 1. That's insane. Okay, that's just wild to me. Or 25 to 1, I'm sorry. But still pretty wild. Fine. Cincinnati's in fourth. Cincinnati's got the fourth best odds. And then the Cubs are in last place in the Central, holding on to the third favorite spot to win the Central at plus 1,200. It makes a little bit of sense, though, right? Because here's the thing. The Cubs are kind of proven this season, right? But also, the Cubs have some weak spots. Because, sure, Seiya Suzuki, Michael Busch, Ian Happ, all of them OPS over 800. All of them are offensive juggernauts for the Cubs, which is great because Cody Bellinger's on a down year. Morel has always been hit or miss because he's kind of a home run or a strikeout type of guy. But Shota Imanaga's been the show for Chicago. It's been really good. But the question about Imanaga is he's coming from Japan. So they don't pitch as much as starters in Japan as Shota Imanaga, right? And Yamamoto if he didn't get injured. But as Shota Imanaga is going to pitch this season in the MLB. And for a wild card and potential divisional championship contending team, it's going to catch up, and it's starting to. Right? He's got 17 starts. In total, he's got 32 earned runs on him. Fine. 20 in the last 7 games, though. That's a lot. So he went 10 games where he only gave up 12 runs total. And now in the last 7, he's given up 20. Right? He gave up 12, and now he's given up 20 in the last 7. That's a lot. That's kind of a downward trend for Imanaga. He's a great pitcher. I love watching him pitch. I love what he does. I mean, he just did really good against the Orioles coming into the All-Star break. Maybe he's one of those guys that really needed this All-Star break, and maybe that's it, right? He was just a little tired, but still has it together. But if not, that means trouble for the Cubs, because now you're relying on Kyle Hendricks, who's not having a great year, Javier Assad, whose strikeout numbers are way up, but wins, losses, ERA, they're not where they need to be. So you need Imanaga to be good. The Pirates, on the other hand, again, in third place right now, lowest odds to win this division. No odds yet for them to just make the playoffs, but they're only a few games out of the wild card. And Paul Skeens is carrying them pitching-wise. They've got Martin Perez. They've got Keller. So they're not awful. They're a game and a half back from that last wild card spot. And when you look at this division, if the season ended today, it'd be the Cardinals that lock up that wild card spot. They'd lock up the second wild card spot, not the third or the first, the second. They'd be in the middle, right? They're chasing that division the way Sonny Gray's been playing, the way Randy Donovan's starting to play. Goldschmidt just woke up. He's been hitting the ball really well lately. Arenado's starting to hit well. I mean, if he plays against the Royals, forget it. Arenado's always going to hit the ball well. But in general, he's starting to pick it up. This Cardinals team, they have a scary roster. I didn't like what happened to them last year, finishing in last place, but they've got the roster to turn around, and Sonny Gray, all of those guys, they can do it. Right now, again, second wild card spot is theirs. But everyone else in that Central is a contender. The Pirates, game and a half back. The Reds, 3 games back. The Cubs, 3.5 back. And this, again, we're talking wild card. Those are not crazy numbers. They're all right there. And then again, the Brewers holding on to the division. So at least one team in the division now is going to make it to October because someone's got to win that division. But they're beating up on each other, these NL Central teams. And that's giving an opening to teams like the Mets. So let's move on to the NL East. And when you look at the NL East, again, the Mets, they're holding a wild card team, but the Phillies, heavy favorites to win that division. Not as heavy as like the Dodgers, which we'll talk about later, but minus 600 for the Phillies to win that division. I mean, Vegas is not giving much of a chance to the Braves or really anybody else for that matter, because the Braves are plus 470, so 4.7 to 1. And then the Mets are plus 1,000. I mean, that's just wild. That's a huge jump. So essentially they're saying it's either the Phillies, maybe the Braves, and nobody else. But I get it. The Phillies are good. Everyone on the Phillies is good right now. They play through injuries, and the guys that they bring up for the injuries are good. The Braves, they're hurt. No Acuna. Right? Their rotation's hurt, but the rotation has been anchored by Chris Sale, league leader in wins. Reynaldo Lopez, 1.88 ERA, and now that he qualifies, he's the ERA leader. And they just won 2 out of 3 against the Padres, which is big because the Padres are another team contending for that wild card spot. They're right there. The Mets, though, right now, even though the Phillies are going to win that division and the Braves are holding that top wild card spot, they're up 4 games on everybody else chasing the wild card spot. The Mets are the story in the NL East, guys. Let's be real here. They're the funnest team to watch. They came into this season with very low expectations. They weren't doing much of anything. They're a very, very bad team. Guess what? The New York Mets currently hold the 3rd wild card spot if the season ends today. Right? Blame the Grimace era if you want to. Blame Jose Iglesias' song, oh my God. Blame whatever you want to. But right now, the New York Mets are not only contenders, they hold the wild card spot. And now I want you guys to think about something. In 2019, the song Baby Shark became a sensation again. We all knew when we were kids, fine, but Gerardo Parra of the Washington Nationals had it as his walk-up song. I think it was for his kids. And that just became a thing around Washington, around D.C., around the fans. And look, granted, fine, Jose Quintana and Sean Manaea are no Strasburg and Scherzer, right? Mark Vientos is a great young talent. He's no Juan Soto. But when you can get the fans to rally behind you in excitement, not just expectation, and not just on eggshells, and not just walking on glass, but excited about your team, that can energize a ball club. And all of a sudden, we could really see the Mets a couple months from now playing in October. So don't count them out, right? And speaking of Juan Soto, because I just brought him up, the Nationals won the Juan Soto trade. The Washington, I didn't think I'd say that. I don't know that anybody in baseball thought down the road when that trade happened that they'd be saying that. But give the Washington Nationals office credit. They did their homework. I know we don't want to give them credit because they mismanaged this whole Strasburg retirement thing. I get it. But the Washington Nationals have won the Juan Soto trade. Remember, they got Mackenzie Gore back. He's been great for them. They got James Wood. He just came up and he's looking really good for the National. And their star shortstop who was in the All-Star game this year, C.J. Abrams. For Juan Soto going to the Padres, plus two prospects. Plus two prospects who we have yet to see, but I'm sure are on their way. And Juan Soto went to the Padres, and he's no longer a Padre. So who won that trade? Obviously Washington. Speaking of the Padres, let's dig in to the NL West. Why not? Right? We're already talking about them. We already know who the favorite to win that division is. And it's the Dodgers. And I just said the Phillies were heavy favorites. But you want to talk about a heavy favorite? The Dodgers are at minus 3,000, again, according to FanDuel, to win the National League West this season. That is pretty much a guarantee. And if you need any more proof, they've got the Padres, who are in third place in that division, tied for second, really, but via differential, they're in third place. The Padres are at plus 2,500 to win that division. 25 to 1. 25 to, you bet $1 on the Padres winning that division. I'm not telling you to do this, but if you bet $1 on the Padres winning that division, and they do somehow, you're winning 25. Just like that. I mean, that's insane. That's how much they're giving this team. But I get it. Sure, the Dodgers are a little hurt right now. Fine. But it's just right now, and they're still winning. I made a video. One of my very first videos on the Baseball Odds Watch Instagram was, could Ohtani win the MVP as a DH? He'd be the first to. Ohtani has been putting up MVP numbers this season. Let's take a look at his stats this season, because it's insane. Leads the league in home runs. Leads the fourth in average. Sixth in RBI. Second in OPS. 29 home runs. 316 average. 1.036 OPS. If he can stay at this pace, why wouldn't he be the MVP? Name me a better candidate in the National League for MVP right now than Shohei Ohtani. There isn't one. There's really not, and the guy's not even pitching this year. Imagine if he was even remotely effective as a pitcher and was pitching this year. Of course he'd be the MVP frontrunner. That wouldn't even be a conversation, but because he's just a DH, we've got to have the conversation, and I still give it to him. Padres and DBacks are tied for second place. I mean, at the end of the day, do you want to be in second place in the NL West? Only if it means a wild card. And we saw what the DBacks did as a wild card team last year. Both the DBacks and the Padres one game out from a wild card spot behind the Mets. So, I mean, Dylan Cease is doing his thing. He's the league leader in Ks in the National League. Luis Arias, who got traded really early in this season, and people were like, why are the Marlins, why would they make such a trade so early? This is why. Are you kidding? Luis Arias is leading the league in hits. Why wouldn't you want to do that for a contending team? Why wouldn't you, if you're a contending team, want the league leader in hits on your team? But in the NL West, right, the Diamondbacks have been doing great. Sure, they've still got some things to figure out. Is Montgomery going to be that guy at all or not? And Eugenio Suarez was the big move they made. How's he doing? Do they have enough to stave off the Padres and get in? Big question mark there. It's not a rhetorical. You can answer it and let me know. Now, the Giants, don't count them out yet because they are 3 games back from a wild card. So maybe we do have the wild, wild west after all. Giants only 3 games back from wild card. So technically everyone but the Rockies in that NL West is somewhat a contender. And guess what, Giants fans? Blake Snell just pitched his best outing of the season against the Twins, who are contenders. I mean, do we need to see more to say that this team can play? Does Elliot Ramos have to do more? Jorge Soler have to do more? Maybe Matt Chapman? I think this team is good. They could surprise. I feel like every year we're looking at the San Francisco Giants as a quote-unquote surprise, but why? Every year they're somewhat there, if not there. And again, they just beat up on the Twins, so I'm just saying that's a really good team. So let's move on from the American League West. Let's move to the American League West. How about that? I like that transition. Let's keep it out there in the West Coast because things are going crazy out there. There's a really big series coming up this weekend. Right? I'm just going to allude to it by giving you the odds, and the standings are pretty much the same for the AL West. The Mariners are 1 game up in first place, and they're minus 125, quote-unquote favorites, because that's barely a favorite, to win the American League West. Who's right behind them? Take a wild guess. The Houston Astros. There's only two teams above 500 in the AL West. But the Astros are now 1 game back from first place. People were writing them off. But now that you're contenders, Astros, you've got kind of a problem here. We all know what's going on with Alex Bregman. This is a contract year for Alex Bregman. So if you're going to trade him, you've got to do it at this deadline. If you want to get something back for Alex Bregman in case he doesn't re-sign, you've got to trade him now. You know, we saw what the Angels did with Shohei Ohtani last year. They held on to him. They said, we're contenders. We're going to make it. They didn't trade him. They didn't make it. They went and got Lucas Giolito. I don't know what move was worse, getting Giolito or not trading Ohtani, but regardless, it did nothing for them. Every owner or GM of every MLB team should look at that and have some sort of PTSD and say, that's not going to be us. And if you're the Rangers, you're in the divisional race. Right now, you're not in the wild card just yet. You're 3.5 out from the wild card. So you kind of got to win the division or you don't make it, potentially. So do you sell Bregman or do you buy? Are we buyers at this deadline? There's some really good talent out there. Are you buying? And what do you buy? Because you've got the same pitching staff you had last season that got it done for you, that got you where you got. Do you trust them or not? The Mariners, they know what they need. They need offense because they're getting carried by these pitchers. They have the best team ERA in the AL, but they have their lineup has the 4th lowest runs scored all season. You're at the bottom of the list on offense, but you're at the very top of the top on defense. I mean, pitching at least. You're at the very top of the top pitching. Is that enough Do you trust that? You should look at these standings and look at how this gap has closed if you're Seattle and say, no, we need hitters. Julio Rodriguez is on a down year. Cal Raleigh is probably your biggest threat at the plate. That's not enough, especially a catcher. Those guys get banged up. So they need offense, and they need it fast, because the other thing is the Rangers pitchers are coming back soon. They have to be. Scherzer and DeGrom. They will be back this season. And right now, Texas, 7.5 out from a wild card spot. When we talk about division, 5 out from Seattle. So I'm talking to Seattle pretty much this whole time. Make the moves. You cannot rely on being a wild card team, because right now there's no West team in the American League wild card. And then there's the A's, right? And the Angels, but kind of a non-compete. Only thing we can say about Oakland is I don't think Mason Miller goes anywhere, because that price is going to be way too high. He's too good. So if a team is willing to give up pretty much their entire farm for Mason Miller, go for it. But if not, I think Mason Miller's got some more time left than in good old Sacramento. Well, at least in an Athletics uniform. So whatever city they'll be in. So let's move on to the AL Central. And this is another fun division because, well, who's going to win it, right? The Guardians are still in first, and they're still the favorites to win that division. Now, my pick for this division is and has always been the Minnesota Twins, because I think when healthy, that team can be unstoppable. But regardless, if the Guardians win this division, you need help. I know Garrett Crochet is going to be expensive because you're both divisional contenders. Or not contenders, you're in the same division, and same division trades tend to be expensive. I know. But if I'm the Guardians, that's what you need, is Garrett Crochet. You do. You need an ace on that roster. I mean, ask yourself, who is your rotation right now? Sure, it has done the job. You're in 4.5 games up in first place in your division. Minus 165 favorites. But do you trust that rotation in October? Who's going for you in game 1 of a postseason series? Who's going for you in game 1 of a postseason series? Is it Tristan McKenzie? And do you trust him if you've got to play that game on the road? If you've got to play in Baltimore? In the Bronx? In New York? Right? And if it's a World Series and you got to pitch in Philly? In Los Angeles? Do you trust that? I don't. I do whatever I have to do if I'm the Cleveland Guardians and I go get Garrett Crochet. I give Chicago whatever they're asking me for without giving up my key lineup pieces, my Naylor brothers, my Steven Kwans, my Jimenez, and my Ramirez. But I go get Garrett Crochet if I'm the Cleveland Guardians front office, because you need an ace. You're going to the playoffs as of right now. You need to think for that. You don't need to think as contenders. You need to think as winners. And you need to go get Garrett Crochet if you're the Cleveland Guardians. You've got to go now. You've got the team to do it right now. But I still like the Twins for that division. Because when healthy, we just saw it for a little bit. When healthy, Royce Lewis and Carlos Correa are pretty much unstoppable at the plate. And if they can keep Jose Miranda when those two come back, forget it. And they're coming back very soon. I think Royce Lewis was only a 10-day stint on the IL, plus the 2 days off we're getting. He should be back probably right after this break is over. So I still like the Twins for the Central, especially if they don't go get the Guardians don't go get that ace. The Royals, they've been a fun time this year too. My problem with the Royals is nothing metric wise. It's nothing numerical. My problem with the Orioles is the energy they play with, or more so the energy they don't play with sometimes, because they'll play these big games against teams like the Yankees, the Twins, the Astros, contenders, and they play flat. They went to Boston and played flat against a team that's in front of them in the wild card. Those are the two probably most surprising teams in the American League this year. If you went and you played flat when you know Kansas City, you've got Michael Garcia, you've got Bobby Witt Jr., you've got explosiveness and electricity. That is your game. You have to come out hot. Sure, Cole Reagans is one of the best pitchers this season. So is Seth Lugo. But if you're not giving them run support, if you're not running around on teams and creating chaos, which has to be your game, fine, Bobby Witt Jr. almost won the home run derby, but are you going to rely on his power, or how about every tool that man has to offer? Steal those bases. Come out high energy. Cheer every out you get. I know you need to hear some let's goes and some chest bumps or something. You need some energy, Kansas City. If not, you're going to be on the outside looking in at the end of September. You're going to be at the outside looking in, watching from a resort in Cancun the team's playing in October. Do you want to play in October? Then you need to come out with energy every game. That's my spiel on Kansas City. The Tigers, though, they disappointed me, man. If I'm going to be honest, I had a lot of hope for this team. I really did. I looked at the roster, the year that Riley Green's putting together, Tarek Skubal's putting together, Urshela, and I had a lot of hope for the Detroit Tigers, but I think it's time to close the book on them for this season. Sure, they're 7 games out from a wild card, but the teams in front of them are dogs, man. Except the Rays, but they're dogs. And it's going to take a lot for Detroit to be able to pull it together and pull it off. So, little sad, but let's see. Let's see what my tone is a couple of weeks from now after we come out of this break. Again, this break does a lot for players, a lot for teams, gives them that reset that they desperately need, and who knows? Let's see. Let's see what happens the rest of July and into August. Maybe the Tigers can turn it around, but they started this year so good. They were one of my favorite teams to watch. Kenta Maeda was good. I mean, Mark Canha was amazing. It just was a really good team. I'm disappointed in the Tigers. Let's move on to the last division, my favorite division, the American League East. And it's not just my favorite division because I'm a Yankee fan. It's just, I think, still the best division in baseball. Honestly. I mean, if you could move any team to the AL East, I don't think they're as good as they are in their own division. Any team. Standings versus odds. First place right away. And we talked about it when we talked about the top 5 World Series odds at the beginning of the episode. The Yankees are the favorites still to win this division. But the Baltimore Orioles are in first place by a game. That last series, that last game going into the break, they were tied and the Yankees blew it. Baltimore took advantage and they won that game. Let's talk about that series a little more for a second. And I want to talk specifically about that benches clearing incident because I've talked enough about the Yankees' weaknesses and they need a better catcher. And the Orioles are just such a dynamic team. They don't really have many weaknesses, if any. They've got a bullpen weakness. And, I talked about no one trading for Mason Miller earlier, but the Orioles have the prospect pool to do it. I would go for Mason Miller if I'm Arrighetti over there in Baltimore. But I do want to talk about this benches clearing incident for a little bit. Keston Kjerstad gets hit on the helmet by a fastball from Clay Holmes or whatever pitch it was. That's not good. You're up 3 runs. It's not good if you're the Yankees. already. Now, here's where I think things go wrong according to everyone involved. Brandon Hyde, announcers, whoever. Clay Holmes, I'm not going to blame him, right? You're a pitcher. You don't really want to show too much emotion. Could Clay Holmes have done a little tap of the chest? Sure. Austin Wells, the catcher. He's the catcher. His job is protect his team, especially his pitcher. So he's going to get in the way of anybody. So he does his job. So it's definitely not his fault. The Yankee dugout was apparently chirping. This is according to Brandon Hyde, right? If you're the Yankee dugout when that happens, shut up. You're in no place to say anything. Sure, fine, he got up, he's moving around. You shouldn't be like, he's fine. It's inappropriate. If you say anything, it should be, I hope he's okay. But just shut up. Let it play out. Anything other than that is going to be taken as disrespect. And if I'm Brandon Hyde, I'm doing the exact same thing that man did. You're over there, he's fine. I'm going right at that dugout and losing my mind. You just hit my player with a fastball on the helmet. Shut up. I love the Yankees, I do, but they're completely wrong in this situation. Just be quiet. It's all you had to do. And you don't antagonize that situation. But both teams frustrated. I get it. But Yankees, you got to shut up in that situation. You really do. Anyway, moving on to the Red Sox. Third wild card spot right now. Big surprise to everyone this season. Really did not think that the Red Sox, I'd be talking about them in a positive light this year, but fifth best ERA in baseball belongs to the Red Sox, or at least fifth best ERA in the American League belongs to the Red Sox. Tanner Houck, Brian Bayo, Cutter Crawford, they're doing their thing. Plus, Jarren Duran, the All-Star, this guy's dynamic. Last year, they were calling for Jarren Duran's head in Boston. They didn't want to see him on the field in Boston. This year, not only an All-Star Game MVP, stealing bases, getting every interview. I love to see it for Jarren Duran and for the Red Sox. I wish nothing but the best for them because I love a story like this. A team that's being counted out, but they just believe in each other. And I give a lot of credit to Alex Cora because year after year, as the Red Sox manager, he's been able to pull his teams together. Where's Steve Pearce, the MVP of the last Red Sox World Championship? Gone. But under Alex Cora, all those guys are ready to play. So I give a lot of credit to them, to Alex Cora, and I can't imagine it's a world where the Red Sox don't give this guy a great extension for a manager. Then there's the Blue Jays and Reds, and Blue Jays and Rays. Blue Jays, it's time to sell. It's time to sell. You're in last place in the division. Your wild card chances are pretty slim. You're not a top 10 chasing wild card team. It's time to sell. It's time to say goodbye to Vladdy, say goodbye to Bo Bichette, get a bunch of prospects just like them when they were younger, and start over. The Alek Manoah situation did not work. And that's it. I'm sorry, guys. Toronto, it's time to recalibrate as an organization. So that's that. And that's those divisions and the storylines coming out of this All-Star break. So I'll talk about one last thing, give you guys my final thoughts before I let you guys go. And it's the All-Star game, since it was just yesterday. I think we baseball fans are spoiled when it comes to the All-Star festivities. So spoiled that we have to find things to complain about. Home Run Derby used to be way too long and monotonous in the old format. Now it's a show. It's packed. It's must-see TV, unlike the NBA three-point shootout and the dunk contest, which has become arbitrary because of the judging, or football players playing dodgeball for whatever reason. Now, for the All-Star Game itself, it's also the best one in sports. The Pro Bowl is two-hand touch, and the NBA All-Star Game has such little defense, they've had to incentivize the game and still don't play enough defense, whereas in baseball, defense is a part of the fun of the game, and it's so pivotal, you can't not play defense properly. But on the topic of incentives, after the 2002 All-Star Game ended in a tie, when both sides ran out of pitchers, remember when Joe Torre and the Diamondbacks coach were coaching, Bud Selig, who was the commissioner back then, made the game worth something. The winner of the All-Star Game got home field advantage for the World Series. Now, it's not a game that's worth anything, other than guys trying to win the MVP money and card, but I would love to see MLB do something like that, or maybe take a page out of the NBA's playbook. Not change the game, but make it for money. See how the All-Star Game becomes a fun game with strategy again. Also, the uniform thing. Maybe I'm in the silent minority here. I'm sure I am. But I do enjoy the teams wearing one uniform. Every other pro league does it, so why not us? Right? I mean, the odds you'll ever see Jose Ramirez, Aaron Judge, Gunnar Henderson, and Jordan Alvarez wearing the same jersey outside the All-Star Game are pretty slim to none. So if I had to give it odds, I'd say probably plus 100,000 or 10,000 to 1 or maybe even higher. But during the All-Star Game, we do get to see the teams that we trade all our prospects for in MLB The Show actually play in the same uniform, even if it's just for one game. So if you ask me, that adds to the dream that kids will have growing up, not just to share the field, but share a jersey with the biggest and best stars for one day. The problem, though, is the uniforms themselves. They're essentially an annual City Connect jersey. They play on the city or stadium with color schemes and symbols, but they usually are a miss more than a hit. I really liked the ones in LA, though, I have to say. They kept it simple. It was great. But especially this year, they were awful. The khaki and red AL and the black and blue NL uniforms, I mean, they were both disgusting. I don't know who approved that. I think there's a happy medium that can be achieved here. Maybe simplify the uniforms, go back to the classic home wears white, away team wears gray. Maybe just make each team's jersey the colors of the home team, right? Like if we're playing in Philly, give the Yankees blue pinstripes, make them red. But I don't know. I'm not a designer, like I said, but I do like to see them wearing the same uniforms as each other, even just for the one game. I think it's pretty cool. I know, again, silent minority here, but there are some of us that like to see it. But other than that, there's not much actually wrong with the MLB's All-Star Week. So I'll leave you guys with this. Baseball fans, stop finding things to complain about. We are legitimately spoiled with our All-Star break. It's the best one in sports. So, big series is coming up, coming out of the All-Star break, starting with Friday baseball and moving on. I see a Phillies-Pirates matchup. I mean, it doesn't do much for the division, but again, like we said, the Pirates all of a sudden are a couple of games out from a wild card spot. So, game and a half. If they can beat a team like the Phillies, man, that's going to change things for them. DBacks, Cubs as well. Both of those teams trying to get a wild card spot going into the weekend. Padres, Guardians, the second place in the NL West. Padres going to the first place Guardians, and let's see. That'll be a good test of if that pitching rotation in Cleveland can be as good as it's supposed to be. You've got St. Louis going to Atlanta to play the Braves. Again, St. Louis and Atlanta are the top two wild card teams right now. That's going to be an interesting series because if the Mets can win their games in Miami and the Diamondbacks can win and the Padres can win, changes things. It changes the spectrum of the wild card right away coming out of the All-Star break. And then out west, we've got the Red Sox in LA playing against the Dodgers. The Red Sox, again, vying for that last wild card spot, trying to keep it. And the Dodgers, I mean, we know, like I said, minus insane numbers as the favorites to win the division and they're the favorites to win the World Series, but people are not agreeing because they're hurt. And then lastly, the biggest series of the weekend, I think, the Astros and the Mariners. Again, one game separating these teams in the AL West for first place, right? And they're in Seattle, so the home team is that first place team, but the Astros are hot. So I think that's going to be a very telling series for all the things we just talked about on this podcast. So with that, I will say goodbye to you all. I will see you next week, or you will hear me next week. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you follow Baseball Odds Watch on Instagram, on whatever podcast application you use, and on YouTube, if we're up on YouTube this weekend. If not, follow on Instagram and wherever you get your podcast. Everyone who joined live, thank you very much. And again, we will see you very soon. Bye-bye, guys.